So we're back with the next devlog of our game Quiet on Set. We're trying to create a no-compromise story game set in the golden age of Hollywood. We're trying to document the entire production of this game, so enjoy! So these past 2 weeks, we've been really focusing on the art style. And the majority of the time we were just brainstorming, trying to figure out something unique, because the art style is very, very important for giving our game kind of a voice, a unique voice within the other sea of games. And so we tried out a couple different art styles and some of our kind of inspirations about the direction we're going in. Games like Dishonored. With Dishonored, we don't want to go with like the cartoony kind of aspect of Dishonored, but more with the painterly, the texture feel. Maybe the mood a little bit of Dishonored. So that's kind of one of the directions we're heading in. And then another game that we were kind of thinking about as an example would be Disco Elysium. And unfortunately, we can't really do it exactly like Disco Elysium.
Right.
Because we looked it up and they actually hand painted. They would render out just a grayscale block out, and then they would paint on top of that, and that would be the final image in the game, was actually just a static image that they painted on top of. And so in their situation, they were able to make a super custom, unique painterly style, but because ours is a big open 3D world, we have to come up with an art style that can be achieved with tiling textures and
vertex painting and mesh.
A lot of the traditional game art techniques, we're gonna have to kind of use that and hopefully invent some tricks and shortcuts for us to make it easier.
One of the other art styles that we were experimenting with was doing our game in black and white.
So we made that scene to do some experiments to see what kind of textures, what kind of colors we could work with, and then we made the black and white version of it, and it was really compelling. We were very close to fully committing to making this a 100% black and white game, no color options.
We were kind of looking at old movies. Right here we have Double Indemnity, Casablanca, Odd Man Out. In these movies, they have such, I don't know what it is about black and white, but they have such a...
Well, there's a feeling of nostalgia, but there's like this emotional reaction you have to black and white images and movies that I think almost everybody is drawn to. But
black and white kind of evokes an emotion of kind of seriousness, or
a lot of times it makes it feel like it's a noir film or it's very somber. And unfortunately, if we don't have color, we're missing out on a lot of storytelling opportunities and the vibrancy of color to make these vista shots in our game that we have the ambition to make these beautiful sets. We're missing out on the colorfulness of all of that. So I think we definitely want to have a black and white option where you can just turn on black and white if you want to play the game that way. But we will be focusing on making the game in color.
The direction that we're heading now is that color painterly kind of look. So we're imagining that the actual materials of the objects all of them will kind of have like brush strokes of paint.
Which you can see in these examples that we made.
So one of the other things we worked on was to start building out tools for creating buildings. And specifically in this example is brick buildings. The whole idea with this is that we can have a really basic shape, just like a wall, and then this will automatically generate bricks, place them in the proper thing, stagger them, and then this adds a lot of little extra detail that we just kind of get for free. So all the bricks have like a random bit of orientation to them. We can automatically pick and choose bricks to give it like the random color. So these are two different types of bricks that are scattered across. And the other really cool thing, this window is automatically punched out of the brick wall. So you can just go in here and just move the window and the bricks automatically place correctly to match where the window is located. So things like that are gonna save us a ton of time for building the world. One of the other things, this right here is the brick wall that we have in our little art style test scene. And as you can see, this has the different brick variations. Every single brick has a slight rotation to it. We can like smear this paint style onto it with vertex colors. I think it looks pretty sweet. All these crazy random colors, these are the vertex colors in the alleyway, and we can actually place these vertex colors here in Houdini with just basic shapes. So we have all these random shapes, and then these paint color onto our geometry, onto our scene here, and then these vertex colors are then used within the game engine to basically spread this painterly brush strokes all over everything. So right here on my brick wall, this was one of those shapes within Houdini. And then over here, like all this green on the ground here, all the dirt was just shapes. Even the trash cans here, you'll see paint dirt onto the ground. So you'll see there's more dirt around the trash cans. Another thing is, we've done it so that in Houdini, we find the edges of the geometry. So on like the corners of these walls, and we apply vertex color on the corners, that way we can have this kind of scuffed paint look. So the primary way you interact with this world from a gameplay and mechanics perspective is the cameras. And so we've been trying to come up with interesting ways that these cameras will work. Some of the ideas is that the cameras can see into the past. Our kind of thought behind how they do that is that the cameras physically move through time into the past, and they're recording as they're moving back in time. And so the consequence of that is you can place a camera on an object. So like for instance, the player is in present time, he's walking around, and then he can place a camera on a briefcase that's sitting there in front of him, and then rewind back in time, and then that camera is attached to the briefcase, and the briefcase gets picked up in the past and is moved around by someone else in the past, and so the camera follows it. So we can use this mechanic to create some interesting scenarios where the player can get into particular areas or rooms that they can't get into, and they can see from different perspectives just by being clever and figuring out like which objects moved within the past. One of the other ideas that we had for mechanics, this plays nicely with how movies were traditionally made. They would use these things called matte paintings, where they'd take a piece of glass and they would paint on it this really elaborate scene, and then they would place the film camera behind the glass looking through it, and then it would essentially paint extra detail into their physical set. And we were thinking it would be really cool if we incorporated that, where you would stumble across different matte paintings that you could pick up, and you're like, man, this looks kind of familiar, and then you would walk around the map, find out where this matte painting should be, and then you can kind of like line it up, and you can get it like just where it's supposed to be. And then if you look through the camera, through that matte painting, it'll give you extra kind of insights into the world or into the story.
So these are just some ideas that we're coming up with, and as we develop the game and we're actually playing it, there will inevitably be more good ideas that we come up with, or as the game evolves, things will start to feel a particular way and we want to lean in that direction. So gameplay mechanics are going to constantly evolve, and we're going to iterate on it as the game builds on itself. Okay, so another story sneak peek. If you don't want to know about any spoilers, you can just skip this part, but we'll still try to be careful and not ruin any of the spoilers.
So last time we spoke about Alex, and this time we want to talk about Alex's father, John Winmore. He's this kind of larger-than-life, eccentric figure. Kind of think of Walt Disney. And he's created this movie studio backlot where he's trying to create a place where they can experiment and create these magnum opus pictures. And as he's been doing that, he's been kind of locking himself away. And over time, he's starting to kind of break and become a little bit insane, I guess.
And you eventually find out that the entire studio is a closed set at all times, and they're very protective about what they actually do at the studio. No one knows. Well, Jed doesn't like this idea, but I had an idea of it for story purposes and gameplay to restrict the player from going outside the bounds of the game. You know, like in Call of Duty, if you go outside, they're like, oh no, it's a danger zone, red alert, and then it just kills you. We have a literal concrete wall that's like 50 feet tall that surrounds the entire studio backlot. And that's for story purposes, that's their privacy fence. And they don't want anybody to know what kind of productions are going on, so that they can keep everything a secret, and they can do things that are maybe not exactly within the law. Kosher. But then also for gameplay, it's a very visual explanation for why we don't want you to go beyond the bounds of the game. So that is it for this week. We always do these awkward outros. Oh my god. Thanks, Skookum Gang.
No.
That's it. Hopefully next week we'll have more.
That's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.